talking faces of a franchise. We're doing most of the top American Canadian promotions over the last 30 odd years, from WCW to Ring of Honor and in between. I should have rearranged some of these better because I would have put WCW next to TNA or Impact because I always considered Impact to be the spiritual successor to WCW, considering like their entire first show is just made up of WCW guys. So oh
Yeah,
well.
as much crap as people give Impact and still do, unfortunately, because Twitter is basically the quantum realm of cunts. Um, they, I mean, anybody who's ever been anybody has come through that company,
Hmm.
particularly those early days. So it's
Speaking
not.
of quantum realm cunts, did you see that Kyrie Irving press conference last night?
Yeah, that was crazy. That was interesting and interesting because like it was like it sucked from both sides. Um, because obviously Kyrie, kind of tried to like, look, I said what I said, but I don't affiliate. And there was the guy was like, no, I did like so my tweet is an endorsement. I'm like, you can't, it's kind of help, but be an endorsement if you tweet about it, and
My favorite part was the part where he goes, "I got a lot of power, over, and influence with the black community," and then a minute later, "You guys give me too much power and influence. I don't have that much power and influence." It's like, Kyrie, you literally just said you did.
oh
I
man,
can rewind the tape. It was 58 seconds ago. It won't be a long rewind.
yeah, it's like you don't even have the fucking ball and you're double dribbling.
I got a personal foul, unsportsmanlike conduct.
That
Number
personal
dumbass.
foul. That's like personal foul, idiotic take. No ground was reached.
Personal foul. Number two, anti-Semitic behavior.
Oh man.
Fucking hell. Let's talk about WCW. Phase of the franchise. So like I stole this from another creator. Forget who it was. I want to say it was Wrestling with Andy, although Andy doesn't actually run the channel.
And a
it's called
YouTuber.
it's called Wrestling with Andy, but like every time the video starts, it's like some other dude's face that pops up as the narrator. It's like, all right, it's like going to to fucking Playboy and expecting Christy Hemme, and then you get not Christy Hemme. It's like, all right, I'm not complaining. It's just
Jillian. Jillian Hall with the face thing.
no. It would be like if you show up for Christy Hemme, but you get Tori Wilson. It's like, all right, I'm not complaining. It's just like, where's Christy Hemme? Now I've watched enough of that YouTube channel, the Wrestling with Andy YouTube channel, to know that Andy does exist. He's a British dude, but for some reason he no longer has any involvement with the auditory parts of it. So I don't know. Go figure. But with WCW specifically, let's go through some of the candidates. You got yourself, your Ric Flairs, your Hollywood Hulk Hogan's. I can't say Hulk Hogan's name, not think of the chick from the Miller Lite catfight girl from WrestleMania 19, where it's
Mm.
like Vince McMahon started WrestleMania. No, Hulk Hogan started WrestleMania. Vince McMahon, Hulk Hogan. It's like, what are you saying? I gotta find that because that's like one of those clips that it's like the Kevin Nash big boot moment, and what's the other one? Booker T calling Africa a country. Those are like my three favorite moments in wrestling that mean nothing to anyone else.
I love it. Damn, we might have to do that list.
Our
Um,
favorite dumb moments in wrestling that don't matter.
don't matter word for lick, but it's everything
I
to
gotta
us.
find that Booker T. I gotta find it because I can't find it.
Your Booker T thing is the Africa thing. Mine is the mini dust midget.
I would call him Mini
Mini
Dust.
dust. What the hell? What the hell you doing?
Or when Booker starts using the lightsaber.
Oh my god, man. Well, what flack as he gets now and deserves, Booker T has always been some form of entertainment, no matter what he's been doing, whether it's been commentary, whether it's been like the fact that he got on the commentary and said like 10 to 15 times back to back, Batista is down.
What was his shtick? His Booyakasha or
Shucky Ducky Quack Quack.
there. Oh God,
Said like I'm sorry I asked.
why did I do that to myself? Not because they're both the same race, but Booker T is very much the pro wrestling Stephen A. Smith. There are some times when Booker T says something where I'm like, yeah, I get you, Book. I get you. And then there's the other 94% of his existence.
I can't believe. Oh,
and
man.
the worst part is like Booker is one of my candidates for the face of WCW. Like Booker is one of my favorites of all time. Like growing up, he was one of those guys. Like I loved his look. It was the high top fade. It really was. I love the high top fade, and he had like the cool pants with the flames on it. I'm like, oh, Booker T's so cool, and he did all the kicks. I'm like, oh, so cool. So I always love Booker T. Like he's, you know, top 5 for me for WCW. You know, you got Sting, you got Goldberg, you got Benoit, you got Malenko, and you got Booker T. Those were my 5 cats from like 97 to 99. And then, half of them left. So like, I love Booker, but I don't know. Marcus, if you had to pick face of the WCW franchise from 1991 or 2, whenever it became WCW, to its closure in 2001, who would you say is your face of the WCW franchise?
Just because of how what a person started and what it did at the time, and probably doesn't get necessarily get the praise that it deserves because it became so much more prolific as another part of the gimmick. I'm gonna say Sting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with your guy because I think we saw so many of the building blocks for what we would see later on with Sting as that that surfer got to talk about. We were talking about this before the show. Talk about Halloween costumes. Or best costumes. That Sting is that version of Sting is a go to. WCW Sting. Um, with the face paint and all that and the jacket and whatnot. So I'm going with Sting. I think that's a very underrated version of him. Obviously, that was prime Sting. And like you said, the great thing about WCW, there's so many names to go to. Like you said, Sting, Goldberg, Benoit, Hogan. Some may throw Vader in there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Flair. Some may throw Luger. Uh,
Steiner.
Steiner brothers. You had the Road Warriors in that time. The Moodle passed through there as well. So, um, yeah, but I probably go Sting. And this is somebody who has a WCW game from on Nintendo 64. You know, yeah. So
Which one?
it's Mayhem.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mayhem's
yeah,
not bad. It's not bad. It's not great. It's not bad. Backstage Assault is ass. But the game to have is WCW NWO Revenge. It's like
yeah,
that
yeah.
was peak.
Yeah, it's crazy. You look back in there, like really thought this digitized mess was classic. That this is horrendous. Yeah,
See, I want to actually play Mayhem again. Because like there's like a lot of guys you can unlock in that. And I miss that about games. Being able to unlock people and not having to pay $29.99 for the season pass.
yeah. The way that the concept has evolved on how people get extra characters is so trash. But we getting pillaged every other way,
Yeah.
uh, financially as well. But yeah, it was. I never was able to get into it because I felt like the control was so clunky
Mm-hmm.
and figuring stuff out. It was like sometimes I get it, sometimes I wouldn't. But like I said, I think my prime game was, as I guess most kids, my particular age was No Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Classic No Mercy. But No Mercy was not the only good wrestling game. It was just the most popular.
I still have the actually not still have. I rebought the TNA Impact game.
Nice.
That game actually is pretty solid. There's not a lot of content in it, but if you're just looking to screw around, oh yeah, it'll get the job done.
We talked about it. Great foundational point that should have been continued. But, I don't know. Has that damn AEW game dropped yet?
Nope. Maybe there's like a mobile game, but clearly it's not taking off. Speaking of not taking off, let's talk about ECW. They're the next brand on the list. You got a hodgepodge of guys. You got a few guys that are long associated with the brand that never left. your Rob Van Dams, and your Tommy Dreamers. You have the guys that did leave and came back and left again that were quintessential to the brand, like your Sandmans, your Shane Douglases, your Terry Funks. You had other guys that were iconic in the brand, but were basically just mercenaries that showed up and left whenever they wanted, like your Sabus and your Public Enemies. You also had your Eliminators, New Jack. But when you think about who the face of ECW is, and I swear to God, if you say Ezekiel Jackson, I'm coming for you. I'm coming
Damn
for
it.
you in the most biblical ways.
God damn it. Ugh.
No, we are
That's one.
not. We are not identifying. No,
Fuck.
leave your gendered politics out of this, Marcus.
We're so close to February. Fuck.
I mean, if you want to pick New Jack, that would make more sense.
Hilarious. Oh no, the life and crimes of New Jack.
The rise, fall, and continuing falling of New Jack.
Yeah.
So, who would you pick to be the face of ECW?
For me, and this may be a personal choice, because I wasn't particularly steeped into the brand. I'm not really a extreme guy like that. To this day, I'm like, if you go give me a death match, like, I'm ordering it from Starbucks. Could you go light on the death, heavy on the match?
Hey, less death match, more slight mutilation.
Yeah, yeah, a splash of death, just a splash, pinch of death. For me, because
Moderate
I think
discomfort match.
exactly. Just only hard bumps, only hard bumps. But yeah, I'm gonna go for me because I feel like this is a guy that truly is, pun intended, one of a kind. I'm gonna go with RVD.
That's fair.
I'm gonna go Rob. I'm gonna go Rob, and I think he's the longest reigning TV champion,
Mm-hmm.
700 days or something like that, and he really is one of a kind because even in that extreme style, he stood out in a way that was must see, even if it wasn't involving that stuff. But he integrated that with his unique style, and like I said, I don't think we've seen another RVD um, since. I mean, I think we've seen certainly a lot of variants, but top tier RVD is absolutely is the definition of must see. And you talk about that brand, you can't bring up ECW and not mention RVD. So that's what I'm going with.
I'm going to go in a different direction, but same idea, and I'm going to go with Tommy Dreamer. With Rob Van Dam, he could do anything in the ring. With Tommy Dreamer, he could be placed anywhere on the card.
Gotcha.
And I think like with Rob Van Dam's athletic, prowess and his ability to just sensationalize everything. I think with Dreamer, he was the antithesis in the ring because he, wrestled such a light style in terms of like what he had to do physically and athletically. But it always was someone that could bring a good match out of anyone, whether it was Rob Van Dam or C.W. Anderson or Raven or Shane Douglas or whoever. And I feel like when you have that kind of versatility, that's something that cannot be bought. Like, those types of guys are rare.
Yeah.
Because you could have Dreamer on the opener, you could have him in a tag match, you could have him in the main event, and it would work. It would work across the board. That's kind of how Eddie Edwards is in Impact right now. Is he's that guy who can be anything. So I think their correlation kind of makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also get the emotional component with Dreamer that you probably wouldn't necessarily get with RVD because Dreamer. But I mean, they don't call it. They don't call themselves the heart and soul of ECW
Mm-hmm.
for a reason. I mean, the guy can tell a story, he can cut a promo, he can really get you to believe in what he's saying, and he will absolutely put his body on the line. Certainly back then. So yeah, I mean, those are two great picks, but specifically Dreamer because it's like he really like the blood, sweat, and tears is certainly affiliated with Tommy Dreamer in that way. And honorable mention to the Sandman and guys like Sabu, no matter what they evolved into, that they took that extreme stuff to the next level. So
Speaking of next level, let's talk about the company that ate them up, Yum Yum Meet 'em Up, WWE. Now we're gonna do a little something different with WWE. We're also gonna have a Raw and SmackDown face as well. But with WWE specifically, we're gonna look at more non-brand era if you will. So Marcus, thinking all time WWE guys, like you have your Brunos, your Stone Colds, your Rocks, your Randy Savages, your Hulk Hogan's, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Diesel. You know, you could do Bob Backlund, Bruno Sammartino. Any of those names, or maybe somebody I'm not even thinking about, that pops up to you that you're like, yeah, that's the face of WWE. When I think of the wrestling side of WWE, you know, a non Vince McMahon doing sexual predator bullshit, what do I think of? Who do you think of when you think of WWE as a brand?
In terms of biggest stars of all time, man, I mean, I don't know how you couldn't say Hogan because, I mean, and you know, you could bring up several names, but in terms of that visibility, that first of its kind in a way, um, just truly the definition of a mega star you're talking about. Hogan, no matter what, like you said, no matter what he evolved into, or what have you, when you talk about even people who don't know anything about wrestling know who he is. We can, you know, list off several things after him, but he really was that first elk. You look at the guys today. You talk about guys they grew up with. They list off five. Hogan's going to be one of them, if not the top. So he really is like a wrestling icon in that regard because I mean, the guy's in the zeitgeist of wrestling pop culture and pop culture in general. So yeah, as much as you don't want to champion him in any way these days, you got to go with Hogan.
I'll agree with you on Hogan. Part of me wants to go with Bret Hart just because I think he was, prior to the brand split, I think he was the guy who was maybe the best worker they ever had.
Yeah,
Another part of me wants to go with Bruno Sammartino because, he headlined Madison Square Garden more than anyone else. But also, the company at the time was just a regional brand. So, that was, all they could do was headline Madison Square Garden. You weren't going to take Bruno to LA or Miami or Dallas or Charlotte and get anything out of him in terms of, the same kind of hype. So, his drawing power was more limited than not. But then you had, Hogan, he transcended wrestling. He was fucking Suburban Commando.
yeah.
You're a dead man, Ramsey. Wow. So that's why you guys don't talk. So there's a lot of personal reasons not to like Hogan. But if we're talking about historical significance, I don't know how you can not go with Hogan as the guy. So unfortunately, that's who we got to go with. Now, for Raw branded specifically, who pops up to you that you go, yep, that's Mr. Raw? And don't say Val Venus.
Got to get out of my head, man. It's not good. Not good. Uh,
Oh, get it? Because he was a porn star? But
OnlyFans came way too late for that guy. He'd be sitting on the hog right now. Um, Raw. Who do I associate specifically with Raw? Man, I got to go. And the guy was around for years, but I mean, maybe this is just me being newer minded thinking about this. I'm gonna go with H cubed.
that's a new way to say it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with H cubed. Obviously, yeah, this is still on the other brand as well, but I feel like he got to a point where he was, he basically ran Raw. I don't even know if the show could have aired a lot at a certain era if he wasn't on it. So yeah, and he's certainly a significant player throughout certainly through WWE history. But yeah, I'm gonna go with as William Regal would say, Triple H.
I'm going to go with someone that may be a little bit surprising considering who I am. But I'm going to go with John Cena. He was the face of the brand for 8 years.
Yeah, man. Ever since he got drafted, it was all him.
From '05 to 2013, he was the guy.
Yeah.
So I feel like we can't go with anyone else but Raw, at least in my point of view, than Cena. Now,
Mm.
for SmackDown, however, things get a little bit more interesting because you got Edge, Batista, Rey Mysterio, Taker, Roman Reigns. You also have AJ Styles. So, who we thinking?
Man, that's just some of the names you listed. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going. I mean, look, this is I gotta bring the man up on the list. He's my favorite of all time, and they freaking named a game after one of his catchphrases for the brand. I gotta go with The Rock.
He named the show. SmackDown
Yeah,
was his show.
yeah.
So I get that.
You
I
know,
get that.
know he rolls at your mouth, all that, and like you said, he named the show. He was, it was exclusive thing, the video game and all that. I mean, that was you don't get no more significant or affiliated, in terms of the brand than that. You kick that off, you start with The Rock, and you work your way down to the Eddies, the Edges, the Undertakers, like you said, now the Styles, um, and so on and so forth. But I got to bring the main man, the Brahma Bull himself, put that thing on the map. It's why I think they had the fist up there in the first place, the classic fist. So I
I
love it.
missed the fist. So for me, I'm gonna go with another longtime guy, but he wasn't the name of the brand, but I feel like he was the heart and soul of it. And I'm going with Rey Mysterio.
Mhm.
From 2002 to 2008, he was the guy. Like you knew you were gonna get a Rey match, and you knew it was gonna be great. And then now more recently, he had the feud with Jericho. What was that? 2009, 2011.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. And even though like they kept him away from the cruiserweight title when it came back, I felt like they shouldn't have. That was stupid. But now he's doing stuff with Walter for the IC belt back on SmackDown after leaving Raw, so he didn't have to face his son. And I feel like Ray is the guy when you're thinking about SmackDown as an in-ring competitor. Now guys like Kurt Angle pop up and Booker T pop up, but I feel like their run wasn't long enough to supersede Ray personally.
No, absolutely. And Ray is yeah, I remember when he debuted and with that classic coming out the floor entrance and whatnot, and wasn't he a part of SmackDown 6 stereo?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can't, and that's people, you cannot that is an all time, you know, point in wrestling, not just SmackDown, because it's not easy to get that many guys like that consistently good at one time. So yeah, Mysterio probably doesn't get enough credit for so much of the stuff that he's done. Also because he's gone through a lot of health stuff over the years in terms of with his knees and whatnot. But yeah, Rey Mysterio was the king, absolute king at one point.
Speaking of one point, let's go to the NWA, where at one point they were kings. We're only going to look at more modern stuff, so I feel like our answers are going to be pretty simple and pretty obvious. So since the revival and the unification of the NWA brand back when Billy Corgan bought it, what was it, 2018, 2019? Who would you deem the face of the brand besides Billy Corgan?
I mean, I think like you said, I mean now that you brought that to the rebranding to like, yeah, I guess you got it. Can you not? If you don't go with all this, y'all like, did you watch anything they did? You gotta give the nigga all this. I mean, look, man, I watched that man go from being picked out of off a TV show, debuting as some like BS gladiator, to evolving through the British invasion and then going off on his own, man, the mafia, this, that, and the third. Um, to maybe potentially getting shortchanged in the way on one brand to becoming the complete and other face in every sense of the way to another at NWA and really spearheading the reformation of it and putting the company on his back in every possible conceivable way, from the presentation, walking it, talking it, press runs, you name it. He's stuck in there for the long haul, and I think it certainly paid off considering coming off from where he came from. Um, he had an epic run. And he did a lot to get that brand back on his feet. And I mean, while it's looking like Bambi on ice right now, When it was sturdy and standing up with that chin up and walking tall, it was because of Nick Aldis. You know.
So the only other two names I would even consider, although I will not disagree, it is Nick Aldis. Nick Aldis is the answer. Would be Tim Storm, and more recently
Hmm.
Trevor Murdoch. Like
Boom.
those are the only three dudes I can think of who have won that NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, and I feel like those are the only three dudes that really should be in conversation, especially Tim Storm. He was one of the linchpins of guys when they were bringing the promotion in. He was, I think, the champion at the time. He was shooting with Josephus for the belt. They did that stuff with TNA or Impact. I forget what they were doing with, where they went to the Impact Arena and did that. What was it, like the no fans match? I forget what it was called. The empty arena match,
Yeah, empty arena. Yeah.
and that was dope. Like that was during the road to the 10 pounds. I think is what it was called.
Yeah, that whole thing. That was another sticking point. That kind of reminded me of what the ROH did with the Pure tournament.
Mm-hmm. It was good stuff. So I agree with you. It's more than likely Nick Aldis. So let's talk about All Elite Wrestling. Talking about End of the Fire. This is the promotion where, like, if you and AEW were on like a high mountain and you were looking into the beautiful view of the side of it and you pushed AEW off the mountain, this would be the promotion where everybody like, so they jumped? No, I pushed it. They jumped. No, officer, I pushed it. The officer leans in. So they jumped. And no one would mind.
It reminds me of that story Samuel told in Deep Blue Sea right before we get eight. Like swore it was the snow that killed the other two, but it wasn't. Nature can be lethal, but it doesn't hold a candle to man.
What did he say? Like, we are gonna get out of here. We are going to survive.
They're like, we're gonna find a way to get out of here. First, we're gonna seal off this pool. Ah!
That you should have sealed it off before you started your diatribe there, Sam. So, who would you say is the AEW face? The face that runs the place. We got Moxley, Cody, Jericho, Kenny Omega, Nyla Rose. I don't know.
Look, man, it's
Britt
without a
Baker.
doubt. There's one clear name that stands above the rest. One of the biggest names in wrestling. One of the guys that stand out. Favorite of you and mine. Um, Somebody we hope to meet one day. Obviously, I'm talking about Southern Kids. No, it's Moxley to me. It's
Mm-hmm.
Moxley. The guy, had a complete, felt like 180. Felt like he literally got. When we talk about, being free from that WWE cage, there's none that felt like they actually were unshackled than John Moxley when he went to AEW. Like all that franticness and that erratic nature that just felt like it just got fumbled all to hell in WWE was specifically when he was the champion on SmackDown. I remember that time we were just befuddled at how they fumbled that ball. But like he really was freed and let loose for the better in AEW. And like we talked about this before, to me, maybe that's just me. To me, he was the best pandemic champion that we saw.
I think that's
Um,
fair.
with what he did, the consistency, what he did, the level of matches that he had, at very dangerous times where you would think somebody would want to be safer, particularly with matches that would uh, promote a lot of more, dangerous exposures during that time and COVID and whatnot. And the guy's he's an ace. I mean, obviously, he's had to overcome some challenges. Thank God he's on the other side of it. But, you talk about workhorses, you talking about John Moxley, and that's what's absolutely what he's been for that company. Throughout all these trials and tribulations that they've been through and are currently in, he's still, you know, to me, a pillar in that company.
I'm gonna agree with you on Moxley, just as more of a definitive, obvious kind of credibility answer. Like I don't want anyone to doubt my credentials. Personally, it's Danhausen because Danhausen is the only reason I watch. But universally speaking, I do agree that Moxley's the face. The only other name that I think can really be held right now, and that's because Cody left, is Jericho. But I'm sorry, I'm not giving the super spreader any type of love. That dude's a disease.
You're a super spreader, the potential spouse that may or may have not been at that damn thing. That should not be named. The hair plugs of it all, the numerous offenses that you could really list with Jericho. But yeah, I mean he has done a lot for the brand, and I'm sure he's been well compensated for it. And to be fair, he put in a lot of work when he first came there, and then continues to do so. But specifically when he knew they had to lean heavy on him because it was a big thing for him to do what he did because he swore up and down he never not worked for Vince,
Mm-hmm.
and he did it, and I think he did it at a unique time. He's always been impressive to me because he's been able to switch gears more than anybody, or most people that we've seen in wrestling, and make it work for him when he's needed to, switching gimmicks, catchphrases, you name it, and coming up with stuff that stuck whenever he needed it to stick, wherever he needed it to stick. Um, so he's definitely impressive in that regard. But yeah, to me, it's between him and Moxley. Obviously, personally, like you said, for you it's Danhausen. Maybe on another side, person for me, it's Cargill. Uh, you know, um, but yeah, it's definitely between those boys. I know some people like you two are asinine for not even bringing up Omega, but that's just a whole nother thing. To me, he peaked when he was in New Japan. In a way, and specifically because I think we got to see him evolve from that cleaner spot the way he got. Um, but yeah, it's definitely Moxley for me.
So I blame the elite for the whole all out brawl that happened and CM Punk leaving and all that. So I want to be clear that I do acknowledge that there is an inherent bias against Omega from my point of view. But the reason why I wouldn't even consider Omega as the guy in AEW is because he's been hurt.
Mm,
He's missed maybe like what, a combined 9, 10, 12, maybe even 13 months worth of work.
yeah,
He came in, and basically didn't do anything for the first however many months. It took him until he was feuding with Rich Swann before he won the world title in AEW. That was what, 2021.
yeah.
Then his run with the AEW title wasn't that impressive. He's been largely a disappointment in my opinion, and it has nothing to do with the all out situation. Like he has not been booked well, and he sure as shit isn't booking the women well. So it's kind of just one of those things where I look at it and I think to myself, why would anyone give this dude any type of notoriety when at the end of the day, his feuds, his matches, and a lot of his angles have either been disappointing, lackluster, or confined to tag teams. I still don't think that Adam Page Kenny Omega team run was all that impressive. So, that's kind of just how I feel.
It's one of them things too. And to his credit, he did put in a lot of work physically with that run. It might have not been spectacular from a feud or match perspective, but I do think a lot of what got muddled in terms of what he did or didn't do. Like I had no idea how like bad a shape he was in until he left
Mm-hmm.
after he dropped the title, and I'm like, he was going and doing stuff like continuously when he should have probably dropped that title like months and months before he actually did. So the way in which he probably pushed himself way past the limit to even continue to be champion is impressive. But like you said, that doesn't have anything to do with the momentum with the feuds and just the spark that sometimes you need to get stuff off. And I think a lot of that has to also do with Paige. For as much as I think, and we eventually when we get merch, we're gonna have a "Wanna Like Your Itis" shirt because I do think that dude does apply to somebody like Paige. Like the cowboy shit was cute. Him actually riding a horse around the arena or whatever was cute, and him. I don't really think the alcoholism thing worked.
No.
Certainly wouldn't work down the line when you're working against somebody like Moxley with the real life stuff there. But I think you really got to just be an Adam Page fan outright to be uh, really tuned in. And Omega, like I said, I feel like in a way he kind of peaked in New Japan, and when he came over here, a lot of what I liked watching him was him bouncing off Callis at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Callis' personality, but even that's kind of dead in the water now. Specifically when he's not tied to TNA, specifically when he's not sitting at a booth getting the crap on Josh every week. So
I think part of the issue may have been the injuries held Omega back.
yeah,
His stuff with Impact was okay, but I think his promos, especially with the stuff with Impact, were his best work. But that's not the reason why you show up to a Kenny Omega match. It's kind of like with Danhausen. Like, I'm never gonna sit here and be like, "Oh, did you see that 5-star classic from Danhausen?" I don't watch Danhausen for the 5-star classics. I watch him because he's a funny hell of a character. So it's like you got to know what you're bringing to the table, and what your goal is. And I feel like with Omega, his goal in AEW has not been to be the top guy, personally. Now let's move on to Ring of Honor, the AEW subsidiary. Now we're not going to necessarily just think about Ring of Honor independently of AEW. If you want to go with somebody like Claudio or Jericho or whoever, you're more than welcome to. But when you talk about the face that runs the place in Ring of Honor, who we thinking?
for me,
You got Joe, you got Punk, you got Bryan Danielson, you got Nigel McGuinness, you got Seth freaking Rollins, you got John Gresham, you got Jay Lethal, you got the Briscoes, Kevin
man,
Owens.
for me, for me, and I'm gonna just go with this guy, but mostly because I missed that prime era of Ring of Honor when it was the tits, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
the good kind. For me, again, this is getting to see a guy go from much like we saw with Aldis's run from you know literally fresh out of the womb guy coming in as a gladiator to what he evolved into the NWA. I gotta go with Lethal. It's not too many people. Obviously, watching somebody as a fellow another black performer thrive in the way that he did, coming off of his Impact run, which was I thoroughly enjoyed his Impact run, but a lot of that run he was basically doing a fan version of another person's gimmick, and while he thrived in it, um, it really wasn't allowing him to kind of self-define on his own. And then while he had his moments in Impact in that regard, um, I think he could have went further, but stuff didn't happen that way. Then he came to Ring of Honor. We got to see him go from that young burgeoning star who had a time in Ring of Honor because he studied under Joe and stuff of that nature, but he came back and turned into a megastar in that company in a way that I hadn't seen when he first got that run as a TV champion and went on to win the world. I hadn't seen a build like that I appreciated since I watched Batista and Cena come up. So for him to have that epic run, obviously that epic confrontation with um, the Briscoe brother, Jay Briscoe, that me and you will continue to rave about until we're blue in the face. Um, Going to be a double champion in that regard for a long time, and then even after he lost it, his journey to getting back to the title multiple times, he really defined the newer era of Ring of Honor for years. So I'm gonna go with Lethal for me.
For me, I'm going to go with Bryan Danielson because I feel like Danielson, maybe even more than Joe, really did amplify what the style was. Joe is especially in 2003, 2004 when he was facing Kenta Kobashi, hell of a performer, but he was a striker. Like he did dives and stuff, and that was what Joe was about. With Bryan Danielson, he did strike and he did some dives, but he was the worker. He was going to take your limb and work you for 30 minutes, and that became so much of the identity of what Ring of Honor was. And I feel like his run with the belt maybe even superseded Joe's in the fact that he held it for a decent amount of time, but he also defended it across the world and really did a great job kind of highlighting what the style and brand of Ring of Honor was at the point when Ring of Honor was starting to become more than just a tape trader. Granted, they would be years away from television and years away from pay-per-view and years away from whatever, but in 2005, 2006, 2007, Bryan Danielson became the best wrestler in the world and made his legacy based off of what he did with the Ring of Honor title. And you can say the same similarly for Joe, but I feel like Joe's era just slightly less than Brian's in terms of notoriety, and only because of the lack of fans. Now, I will say that Samoa Joe did bring in the fans for Brian Danielson to cement the legacy of the brand, but I feel like when you think of like what wrestler defines the brand more than anyone, it's Brian Danielson. Like his entire style and shtick is still felt to this very day. You know, it's the worker world title. You know, John Gresham was the shorter black version of Brian Danielson in a lot of ways. Jay Lethal, very similar to Brian Danielson. You think of guys like Michael Elgin, bigger version, but you know, still a lot of graps. So I think for me, it's obviously Brian Danielson. So that leaves us with two more. We got Impact up next. I don't expect you to have an answer for MLW, Marcus, because I know you don't watch it. But if you have one, you want to contribute to it, that'd be fine. But if you don't, no worries about it. But we're going to do Impact first. And this is TNA, Impact, NWA TNA, whatever you want to call it. Global Force Wrestling. Remember that? Remember that? So, Marcus, of the Impact 20 years of existence, who is the face that runs the place?
I see what you did there, and that was a great lead-in for my answer, because there's no other answer for me than the phenomenal one, the man that brought me into TNA, coming, like I said, I told the story a million times. Like I was a WWE guy, WWE head. That's all I watched. And this guy was just bragging about this guy. This guy, you never seen nothing like him before. He's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm like, yeah, really, what? Like, better than anything in WWE. And then I seen him, and that was history. And that guy is AJ Styles, a phenomenal one. First X Division champion, multiple time tag team champion. You name it in that company, he's done it. Um, he kind of reminds me of RVD, and like we've hadn't seen anything like him when he first debuted, and I don't think we've seen anything like him since. He really is one of a kind of his ilk, and even at his age now, the tender age of 45, he still is a standout, honed performer that can really go in there and shut the building down with anybody. But truly, in those prime TNA NWA TNA days, he was the marquee, and I don't think that's debatable. Some of the greatest matches, probably the greatest match in the company's history, in that three-way into 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that triple threat. And you don't talk about TNA Impact and don't bring this man's name up. And the great thing about this conversation, particularly with Impact, there's a lot of names that you could jostle with this, but I think if you go on top three, I think he's certainly one of them.
You have Samoa Joe.
Yes.
You have Chris Sabin, Sting, Eddie Edwards, just to name a few. I think AJ Styles might be the obvious pick for a lot of people. But I also want to point out that Styles left a decade ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, he left 8 years ago. So he was only there. So he left in 2013. He left after about 11 years. And he ran with Sting, Samoa Joe, Chris Sabin, Christopher Daniels, Hulk Hogan, Team 3D, the Steiner. He ran with a lot of big names. But I'm going to go with someone that we both love. And maybe it'll come as a surprise, but I'm going to go with Eddie Edwards. While Styles may have helped become the name that brought in a lot of guys in 04, in 05, in 06, since then, since Styles left in late 2013, early 2014, Styles has moved away from the company, and the company has had some struggles, but the name that's been consistent with the company since 2014 has been Eddie Edwards. He's re-signed with the brand 3 or 4 times at this point, and he doesn't seem to be going anywhere. He's headlined Bound for Glory a few times. He's been the world champion a few times. He was one of their best tag teams of all time, one of their greatest X Division wrestlers of all time. So he and Styles have had the same type of trajectory in a lot of ways, and they both have had some really great matches. So I feel like only because of the fact that Impact has needed Eddie more than TNA needed AJ, I think is why I'm giving it to Eddie, because he has been the glue that has held this brand together for the last 8 years. And I don't know without him if they'd still be here, simply because they haven't had always the best roster since 2014. And Eddie and Davey, Richard specifically, have been some of the better reasons to watch. So that's why I'm going with Eddie. So
Yeah, you said he with Styles. You said he was in what TNA for what 11 years.
2002 to 2014, but he left like the first 2 weeks of 2014.
And how long he's been in Impact? I mean, WWE now, what, 7 years? Well, no, not 7 years, because
No,
what he
he
debuted,
was in.
what, 2016 he
I
debuted?
would say so. He's been there for about 6 years.
Yeah, it's interesting that I wonder if it's going to be a tale of two cities when it comes to, like if he's going to have the run in WWE that Angle did when he went to TNA in terms of, like, shelf life, because people again don't want to give Impact credit, but Angle was in TNA longer than he was in WWE.
I mean, I think Styles may become close, but
Yeah,
he would have to wrestle another 7 years. And I don't see AJ Styles wrestling until he's 53, 54
yeah,
in WWE. He might. I mean, Angle did. So
yeah,
who the hell knows?
yeah. So we'll see, but yeah, like you said, that list: Sting, Angle, um, Styles, Edwards, Daniels, Joe. Thankfully there is a pretty lengthy list of guys that you could go down and talk about. Obviously, I think an honorable mention is Relic. No, but yeah, that's Eddie Edwards, man. He is that guy, and probably one of the greatest company theme songs of all time.
Yeah. I mean, both of them did. Styles and Eddie
Yeah,
both had the great tunes, great
yeah,
tunage. All right. So, lastly, MLW. Now, this one might be a little bit more obscure for some. Marcus, like I said, if you don't have anyone on the top of your mind, that's fine. But some of the names that stand out to me, going back to the first iteration, you had Shane Douglas, Steve Carino. I think of the first generation, I think Steve Carino is the guy. I think who was it? Swerve? No, it wasn't Swerve. I think it was Swerve who won the belt the first time, second time around. Let's see, MLW heavyweight champion. Let's see. So the first champion was Shane Douglas of all time. Then you had Kojima, Awesome, and Steve Carino. That was the break, and then they came back 14 years later, and Shane Strickland, Swerve, won the return belt. And then Low Key, Tom Lawler, Jacob Fatu, and Alexander Hammerstone. So those are your champions all time. I think for me, if I'm being honest, part of me wants to go with Hammerstone just because he's one of my favorites at the moment. The other part of me wants to go with Steve Carino because he was so very much defined. Like he helped really define MLW at the time. Strickland, he wasn't around for a long time, but he was the first champion and he defeated Matt Riddle to win the belt. So I'll always thank him for that. But just because of the fact that he held the belt for 819 days, even though he didn't really have like week after week competition, I think he wrestled maybe 16 or 17 times in that span. I got to go with Jacob Fatu. He had one of the bigger matches with LA Park in, what was it, 2019. He ended up defeating LA Park in like a crazy ass match in Chicago. So I think for me right now it's Fatu. He's phenomenal. He really is.
yeah. Hey man, that family is filled with it. Also, I think the momentum for your likability more leans towards Hammerstone. Of course, he's presented differently and the product's different. But I mean, I don't think you. I mean, the greatness in that line, man. I don't think I've seen anything like Fatu in his specific regard since Umaga.
Mm-hmm.
And his, I think, is a more refined, honed version of it. But it's almost like when I first saw him, because obviously we've had many talks about MLW, and I went and checked out some clips in the show or a whole show, and I'm like, Jesus, did he reincarnate? And then
Looks just like him.
yeah, just like him. And then it's just like this guy's an absolute hoss, wants all the smoke, and you know, like you said, besides from Hammerstone, that guy's just an absolute stud, man. And it's crazy that family is dominating on in two different companies, but that the sentiment is the same. Like, um, just that toughness and that ass kickery vibe that comes with it. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Hammerstone came to my mind because of how much um, you laud about him, and rightfully so. The guys, he's another stud. Looks like an absolute house. He looks like something out of the Vikings or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I've ever seen you tweet about Jericho's podcast until you saw him on it. So, that says a lot. I don't, Chad ain't around here pushing Y2J merch or stuff. So, yeah, that says a lot about that kid. You know.
He's real good. Real good. For me, Hammerstone is a good guy Hulk Hogan. Like,
Yeah,
imagine if Hulk Hogan wasn't an utter scumbag. That's Hammerstone. One of the biggest things that he went through before he won the belt was his girlfriend had cancer. And, you didn't hear anything about him, sleeping with his best friend's wife.
no.
You didn't hear anything about him drag racing. You didn't hear anything about him, doing anything stupid or making fun of black people on telephone calls in prison. So, Hogan's a shitbag and Hammerstone's not. But Hammerstone has that 1980s Hulk Hogan energy. He's a big, jacked white boy with blonde hair, and he just growls and snorts and jokes about taking steroids. Like,
he does look like he foams at the mouth. Like,
he does. One of the best bits that they were doing is when they were still doing Richard Holiday and Hammerstone as the Dynasty. They went down to Puerto Rico, or was it Mexico? I forget where. I think it was Puerto Rico, because they were hunting Savio Vega, and Savio Vega's from Puerto Rico. But I remember them being at the border, so I think it may have been Mexico, and Vega may have been working in like AAA or something like that. I can't remember where Vega was working, where they were hunting him, but they were hunting him down, and they're like at the border, and Richard's like, "So Hammerstone, you good?" And he goes, "Yeah, man, we can go in the country." And Holiday's like, "No, are you good?" And Hammerstone's like, what do you mean?" And he goes, "Hammer, are we good?" He goes, "Oh, I don't have anything. I don't do that stuff. And Holiday's like, "All right, Hammerstone, but I swear to God, if you have any steroids on you," and he's like, "I don't have any steroids. I don't take steroids." And Holiday's like, "Sure, Hammer, sure." So like the in jokes about it is hilarious. Speaking of which, we're gonna have to talk about Jordan Grace eventually.
whoa, what happened?
Nothing happened, but people are posting videos of her in like 2018 doing promos and interviews, and now, and let's just say her voice went from, charming girl next door to
Yeah, I
monster
have
truck.
heard. Yeah, I have that's been something I've noticed, and I've not said anything about it because obviously the times we're living in. But you are the person I will talk about it. But yeah, she's gone from sounding like that wholesome girl next door that's like, wow, she look like she can bench press me, to sounding like, who? You remember the person? What movie am I thinking about the coach that had the skirt on and the nuts fell out?
Oh, I have no idea.
The man girl coach that was in the, was it Scary Movie, or
Oh,
was it
see, I
Scream?
haven't seen a lot of the scary movies, so I couldn't help you there. I've seen the third one. That was
Okay,
awful. I saw
all
the
right.
fourth one too. Or did I just see the third one? I saw the one where they did the invasion of the body snatchers. Not that one. The one where what was it? The day after tomorrow, like whatever the one with the they were mocking the Tom Cruise movie, War of the Worlds. That's what it was. I saw the one
Yeah, I think.
where Scary Movie did mock that one, so I think that was the third one. Because they also did
Yeah.
they did the 8 Mile parody in that one too with Kevin Hart. That was
Yeah,
pretty
this
good.
is yeah, this. Let me see if I can send you this. This is it. But yeah, the voice thing, but I think that has to do. I don't know if that's a natural thing that happens when you lift the way that she does, or that's something that happens when you do something else. But it is interesting that ticking voice, because I seen that happen with another chick too, that used to be a ebony plus size model, and her voice was kind of on the more lower register end, but it wasn't like it is now. So I'm wondering if that comes with the elevated testosterone that would come when you lift like that.
And that was something I was thinking about because I know like testosterone raises in women when you become a bodybuilder. Like if you lift that constantly, like your natural testosterone will raise levels. So I don't know much about steroid use in women. So I don't know because like some people says that steroids will elongate the what is it the vocal cords.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true or not. I know testosterone rises when you build muscle. That's something that happens. So it may be a natural phenomenon. Not even a phenomenon.
yeah,
It may just be a natural thing. But this is something that we'll talk about in greater detail because like it ultimately the conversation will come down to if she's on steroids, who the fuck cares? But that there's things I want to pull from to expand on the conversation that we just don't have time to do tonight.
yeah.
So that's it. We'll go Fatu for MLW. Any other things that you want to touch on before we call it a night, Marcus?
I don't think so. That was it. Nothing big happened. Nobody got uh pulled or traded anywhere. You talked about. I think you talked about the juice thing. We'll see what happens there. Hope we don't get slotted in as another member of the. How about to call them the faces of eights. In the Dark Order or something. But never know.
You can be the leader of that Nightmare faction, whatever Brandy's group was called before she left.
Oh shoot! I didn't even think about that. What the freak? She left and we lost. What's his face?
You have to be a little bit more specific, because
Gets a lot of what's his faces. The guy she turned the fight guy. What the freak is his name? Why am I forgetting?
Dan Lambert.
Dan Lambert. Yeah, we haven't had Dan Lambert. Like we lost her and Dan Lambert. Are we supposed to keep him?
Bring back Dan Lambert, damn it.
But to be fair, I don't want him to come back and for his relevancy to come like, oh, he's got a new black villain woman. Like he start beefing with Jade Cargill, who could legitimately kill him. So maybe
The
he'll just
memes.
maybe he'll just develop a crush like a natural crush on Kiera Hogan, because
I
yeah,
mean, who wouldn't?
yeah, that thing be thangin'. Yeah, yeah,
Like, who wouldn't, honestly?
yeah.
All right, so with that being said, we're done for the night. We're going to log off, sign off, and all that stuff. RealNerdCorp.com, RealNerdCorp.com. You can find all of our past shows on there. You can also find us on YouTube and Twitch as well. Links will be on the website. I'm going to update our banner for the show because a lot of these links don't work anymore.
We told you we were evolving. Chad's always finagling with things, so
Well,
switch.
not as quickly as I should be. You can find us on Twitter at NERDCORP. You can also find us individually on the Twitters as well. Marcus, you're on Paradox Kid on Twitter, PARADOXKID.
That's me.
We will not be paying $20 to Elon Musk. No, thank you. You can find him on his other podcast, The True Penny Show, TruePennyShow. That's True Penny Show with 2 N's on Twitter. All their links go up there as well. That's Marcus's other podcast that he does. You can find me on Twitter at Chad Nerdcorp, ChadNerdCorp, and on the Instagram at Chad's Photo at ChadSphotoHut. Marcus and I will be doing our eventual movie television shows. Does it suck? I don't know if that's the name of it, but that's basically the premise of it. So I look for that. That's going to be coming here in the next couple weeks. That's about it. So for Marcus Green, I'm Chad Porto. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for giving us a chance. Remember, as always, to watch more wrestling. And Marcus, take us home.
Good night, me.